Hello and welcome to this fine Wednesday morning. Good morning to everyone. My name is Steve Young. I am going to be your moderator for today's session. Quick housekeeping before we get into it. Anyone has any questions, do please drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as we go. We've got plenty of questions from the audience so far and plenty to get us started. So today's session is titled From Hype to Impact, Realizing ROI with Agentic AI. So we're going to be exploring the AI hype, and we're going to uncover why so many companies struggle to realize ROI from their AI initiatives. So our speakers today are Martin Strickland and Daniel Baker. And Martin is the CEO of Clear Dynamics with an MBA from Melbourne Business School. Martin has led strategic transformation and growth across complex enterprises for many, many decades. And Daniel is a solutions engineer with, or I should say, engineering leader with about 15 years experience in automation. He's on identifying and digital transformation and really helping companies reduce complexity. As for Clear Dynamics modernizes legacy and shadow IT applications using AI and automation to rapidly generate modern, scalable, robust cloud-native applications at a fraction of the time compared to other modernization approaches. So I'm very excited to hear what's going to be getting covered today by Martin and Daniel. So if you're looking ultimately to breathe new life into your old systems, whether that be using a data-first AI-driven automation platform to build that modern enterprise software and you want to do it fast, then you've come to the right place today. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pose the first question to you, Martin, if I may. Um, Martin, so let's start with the big picture. Right, AI seems to be everywhere in IT boardrooms right now, right? So from your perspective, what's driving this hype?
Mm. Yeah, thanks, Steve. And good morning to you all. Look, absolutely, AI is the number one conversation I and we as a business are having with CIOs and executives at the moment. They all recognize that AI is both an opportunity and a threat. We're seeing banks experimenting with customer sentiment agents, lenders building origination assistants, and smaller firms using tools such as Cursor to boost developer productivity. But behind the hype, there's also uncertainty. What's the right investment model? Should we build or buy through an agent builder? How can we avoid lock-in? And most importantly, the biggest question always is how on earth am I going to get a return on investment for what might be an uncertain black box of spend?
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna dig a bit deeper into that for sure. And Dan, look, what's your experience been like talking to organizations about their AI initiatives?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I guess I'd start by just setting some context around what we mean by AI initiatives and what we would call an agentic AI solution. So, as you probably know, large language models or LLMs have been sort of in mainstream attention since the end of 2022. And it is really easy to set up like a chatbot interface that's powered by an LLM. And some organizations or teams will call this an AI agent. But in reality, or depending on your definition, I would consider that to have an agentic solution, your agent needs to be able to retrieve contextual data from other systems, be they internal or external systems, and then it needs to be able to take some form of action as well, based on what it needs to do, as opposed to just writing out text. And this is still a quickly evolving ecosystem. And so in my discussions with, our prospects, our partners, customers, just organizations in general, the rollout of AI solutions doesn't always have, a straightforward pathway to success or to return on investment. And in fact, there's been a number of studies that have come out recently on this topic, including there was a recent report from MIT that stated that 95% of AI initiatives fail to produce a measurable return on investment. And just from my experience, like I broadly categorize the reasons for unsuccessful or maybe AI initiatives that don't get that ROI. I'd categorize them into a few different buckets. That would include not choosing the right types of problems to solve with AI, not managing the rollout effectively, and sort of that change management process not being quite right, or also not understanding the concept of human in the loop and why that would be important.
Okay, so what would be the right or wrong sort of problem to solve with AI?
Yeah. So in that instance, like I think an important factor to keep in mind is that large language models, which are the basis of most, agentic AI solutions, are unpredictable or non-deterministic in nature. Um, and you'd contrast that to when you build an application with code. So when you solve a problem and you write some code to solve a problem, it provides a repeatable solution that is deterministic and it will produce the same result every time. Whereas with generative AI, I guess you could call it probabilistic, and it means that it will return a different result every time. Well, not every time, but it can return a different result every time, even when you're giving it exactly the same input. And so then it really comes down to what is the type of business problem that you're trying to solve with AI. Different language models have different sort of attributes about them. But you could say that in general, like an LLM could return an incorrect result anywhere from, 10% of the time to 30% of the time, even when there's trying to solve a well-defined or well-prompted task. And in fact, that previously mentioned MIT report stated that one of the common reasons for projects failing is that teams are spending a lot more time validating that the AI is returning the right output, than they're actually saving on time. So like the validation of AI eats away at all of the return of investment, that you'd get, but from the actual time saving. So to me, this would indicate they're actually solving the wrong type of problem. And maybe, they have either they needed to choose a better problem to solve, or they needed to fine tune the AI a bit better, um, or they needed to put in proper guardrails around what the AI is doing. Um, it could have also been that they've not designed the solution. Like it could be that AI was the right approach, but they needed to consider the human in the loop a little bit more, and they've sort of failed to appropriately do that.
No, oh, okay. And well, to Martin then, so what is meant by human in the loop, just to be clear?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question. So just let me step back a little bit. We all know chatbots like OpenAI. What came next were AI assistants, where an AI agent was built to help a human decide or act. What's now being built are agents, some of which are autonomous and some of which are not. In an autonomous agent, we trust, or the company trusts the agent to decide and act on their own. However, most of the agents that we're seeing companies build partner the agent with a human so that they've got a human checking the result, as Dan has talked about, before acting. And as Dan's talked about, the reason is that AI doesn't always give you the same answer. And that's what we call a human in the loop. We're putting someone in the loop to check and validate the output of the agent. An example might be using an AI agent to manage a customer complaint. We could certainly build an autonomous agent to do this, but would we trust it to engage with our customers sensitively and thoughtfully? Probably not, or at least probably not yet. And according to Gartner, 74% of
Mhm.
employees are just not ready to use AI in their daily work. So putting a human in the loop is an important step to building trust in AI solutions. Most clients are telling us that they're not ready for autonomous agents yet. So for this audience, I think it's really important to know where you want to go autonomous and where you think it's really important to put a human in the loop.
Okay, interesting. Look, so many companies are exploring agentic AI. The outcomes often depend on how well the AI can access and integrate with company systems and data, right? So from your perspective, how critical is integration with existing applications and the availability of high quality organizational data to actually realize ROI from agentic AI?
Yeah, so vertical integration is critical. Um, I mentioned it before that um, in order for an AI agent to actually be able to do something, it needs to be able to it needs to be able to pull in data from internal sources like knowledge databases, and then it needs to be able to actually take actions. And so, in actual fact, one of the reasons why a lot of organizations start talking to us, and this goes back to our core value proposition of application modernization, is they're trying to build agentic solutions. Not necessarily on our platform, but like that's their goal. But they've got these legacy systems that exist which don't allow them to I guess make the data visible to an AI agent to be able to do something with it. And so where we actually talk to a number of customers is, or a number of organizations is where they come to us and they're like, okay, well, we want to build an AI solution, but we've got these old sort of mainframes, or we've got these old legacy applications which don't have any way to expose the data. And then we actually start working with them to modernize those applications, which it feeds into their wider IT ecosystem where they can then start developing sort of agentic solutions on top of that.
Okay, look, so just going, but thanks for that, Daniel. Look back to Martin, maybe. So would you say that if you chose the right problems to solve and design the solution to have a high degree of trust from people, what's the key to seeing ROI?
Mm. Yeah, it's actually a really good question. This is what most clients are asking us and talking to us about. And there's a step that's missing that you're talking about. So imagine that we do make the changes and design some AI agents. How do we redeploy and earn back the time that employees are now gaining from AI solutions? I've talked to several companies who think, in fact, they know their employees are more productive, but they've not seen a meaningful return on investment. It's a really important part of any AI project to be very clear, not just on what you want to achieve from it, but how you're going to achieve the outcome. But the real issue is just because you save time, it doesn't mean you save money.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's true. Maybe I'll flip this one to Dan. So many obviously leaders and executives like they're struggling to pick where to start, right? So how do you help your customers choose the right use cases?
Yep. So it's a combination of everything that we've already discussed. Like at Clear Dynamics, we use AI to help modernize legacy technology, and that's one lens through which we look at it. But
Hmm.
we also work with customers to add agentic workflows just to support their wider business processes, not always directly connected to modernizing legacy tech. But when we're looking at this, we generally looking at it through a framework which includes a lot of the things that we've already discussed. So is the problem that you're trying to solve, is it deterministic or not? Like how much decision making needs to be applied, and then what's the impact of getting that decision making wrong? And generally, what I'd say is if you're trying to solve a problem which is extremely well defined, there's a really well defined set of steps and processes and criteria, then AI is probably not the wrong fit, and you're probably better off just building a non-agentic solution to solve that, or you're putting agentic components like within the wider process. The second is definitely that vertical integration. So do you actually have the data, and do you have the integration capabilities that would allow the AI to be effective? And I would say, again, like a lot of the organizations we talk to, particularly the ones who, are a bit older and they've been around for a bit longer and their IT systems um, are considered, more legacy. They're the ones where I'd say you really have to do a whole lot of tech modernization and application modernization before you start looking at, something cool and trendy. And then the third,
Mhm.
which Martin just touched on as well, was just looking at the actual business impact. And I think this is really important when it comes to the reason why you're trying to put an AI solution in the first place, because we have I think there are a lot of CIOs and IT executives out there who just have they just have a bullet point in their KPIs, like, explore AI solutions and leverage them to do something. But when you look at it from just like, how am I going to use it? You're not necessarily going to land on where is it really going to deliver value. And so I guess the final part of this that we look at is when you're identifying the sorts of things that you do with AI, it's like make sure that you really know how you're going to measure the return, and is it going to move the needle? Because if it's not going to move the needle, then maybe it's sort of a waste of time, even if you're ticking off you might be ticking off a checkbox on a KPI list, but ultimately it's going to be a waste of time.
Well, I'm just going to dig a bit deeper on that one. So yeah, absolutely. Elaborate and talk about the impact of AI on the P&L, right? Is anyone really achieving significant improvements in profitability from the use of AI?
So I can give you my take and then I'll hand over
Yeah,
to Martin as well. But
yeah.
the answer would be yes. Like there are definitely organizations who are seeing the return on investment, but there's just different approaches to actually doing it as well. And so actually back in that, again, I'm going back to the same MIT report. They actually did some analysis as well on what's the difference in seeing an ROI versus from when you purchase like an AI solution versus when you try to build your own. And they certainly found that organizations that are leaning more towards the purchase side are seeing a higher percentage of return on, like a high percentage of them are seeing a return on investment versus the ones that build. But to me, that probably also comes down to the level of expertise within an organization. So if an organization doesn't have the right people, and it doesn't have like the experience for building agentic solutions, then they are just going to struggle, or they're going to get a slower return on investment. Whereas when you consider working with a vendor who specializes in it and have been doing it for a long time, and who are probably rolling out those AI solutions to a large number of customers, they've probably got their stuff. They've got their ducks in a row. They know what they're doing, and so you're more likely to see a return on investment. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
Martin, if you had any differing thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think at this stage it's all about the definition of what success is. And I know we've talked a lot about hard ROI, but at this stage, think we're seeing a lot of clients step into the arena and take a step forward, and that's success in itself. And so the companies and clients that we really worry about are the customers who aren't doing anything.
Mm,
And so we're that help there as Linus's blanket to give them some comfort to get on with it, try something, and yeah, at least take a step in the right direction.
yeah, okay, yeah. And governance, Martin, is always coming up when executives talk about AI. What's your take on that?
Yeah, governance isn't just about client compliance, and we've talked about it a bit today. It's also about trust. You obviously need clear guardrails around how the AI makes decisions, how models evolve over time.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you risk shadow projects starting up in your business, which underline security, create reputational risk, and mostly create complexity. Uh, Mostly it's about governance to manage risks that come from, I believe, the individual use of AI across your business. And they're trying to grab back some of that value that's being attributed to the individual to the entity. There's a number of tools and software that help you can do this. It's obviously simpler for a smaller business, but at scale, this is a real headache that I think and we think few businesses have really solved.
Yeah, okay. We've got a long. I'm gonna just give you this is a pretty long one here. So a few good points here. So how do you balance the company's objectives of streamlining tasks and being more efficient, but still delivering a high quality service to customers? Often the former is the main reason for AI agent automation, but many consumers have found, especially initially, communicating with a bot very frustrating and less helpful in contrast to communicating with a person, hence why human intervention seems to be important and available backup option when AI isn't providing consumers with the answers or being helpful help that they require. And one last point on that is also due to the AI's inconsistent quality output. It seems like it requires constant tests and updates to manage as well. So it's a fully loaded one there. I don't know where you want to break that one down there, Martin. Um,
I think we might let
Yeah.
Dan take that one, mate.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess yeah, you are balancing. So the quote at the start there, you talked about balancing the organization's objectives of efficiency versus the quality of the output. My my thought on this is that you like there is going to be a scale. There's always going to be a scale, but in terms of, you've got something that's very efficient, but maybe it's not as good versus you've got a human basically doing everything. But I do think that, even now, AI agents, from a quality perspective, the types of responses that they can give is actually pretty high quality, and that's only going to keep getting better over, the net. Like if
Mm,
you think that the ChatGPT phenomenon only started in, I think, November 22. And so we're not even 3 years from then. And you see how far it's come in that short time. Like
mm,
I do think that, in the next couple of years with how fast the models are advancing. So that's like the underlying large language models. And then also just the ecosystem around it is growing more mature, and it's becoming easier to deliver those types of solutions. It's becoming easier to fine tune the models as well. Um, so I guess I agree with the overall premise of the question that right now it can be difficult to balance the efficiency with perhaps like some incorrect results. But I do think that, in the next couple of years, that balance will probably become a much simpler or easier balance because like the technology is just improving every day and at a really rapid pace.
yeah, okay. So look, in a world of sort of hybrid working arrangements that we live in, what steps can you take to be more likely to convert time saving into productivity gains for the company?
Yeah, look, I might leave that one. Well, I'm sure Martin will have his own opinion on that. Like for me, um, yeah, I think there is a challenge because you've got like you will have efficiencies that you gain from using AI. So that's really where, you're not trying to replace people with AI, but you're trying to make them more efficient. Um, but then what are they going to do, like being more efficient? And I think I can't remember if Martin just said it now, or if we've discussed it previously, but it's like, if you save a whole lot of time by using an agentic solution, uh, but then you don't really have expanded job role, has the organization really seen an ROI? I do think that that's Yeah, that's an open
That's
question
a
that
deeper, longer question.
an organization needs
Mm.
to have a plan. Like, well, we've become more efficient. Like, how are we actually going to see the ROI on the efficiency? I'm not sure, Martin, if you had anything else to add to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think right now for most companies, AI is a tactical. It's not a strategic. Like we have lots of people trying lots of different things, and I think at some stage we move from AI being a tactical game to being a strategic game, and that's really when we start talking about culture and capability. And so the governance model, why whilst you manage risk and compliance ties together a number of thematics around strategy and around culture, which gives the business guidance on where they should invest and where they should not. And I think at that stage, it becomes a leadership issue and a board issue. And only when it reaches that level and turns into intent do we really see the tying together of all the experiments that are on in businesses today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, nice. Okay. So for businesses just using OpenAI style APIs, do you expect usage costs to fall with efficiency gains or stay high because of power constraints and demand growth?
So personally, I feel like the usage costs will probably stay the same or even increase. Um, but that's yeah. So and that would be on the basis that there's so much money being pumped into this space right now that almost all the organizations aren't turning a profit. So if you think about um, even just like Cursor and Windsurf and all the tools that developers have flocked to use AI, they've all been losing, billions of dollars, and are propped up obviously by having lots of funding and the promise of future profits. But I do think that I don't really see costs dramatically reducing. I think the costs will remain somewhat where they are, and it'll just be offset. Like there'll probably be a bigger desire to make profit, and but then there will be some technology improvements as well, which will then bring the cost down. But I don't think it's going to be. I don't think you'll see dramatic reduction in cost.
Okay. Just a quick one. So companies should they be letting customers know upfront when they're speaking to an AI agent, or should we or do we need to give customers the option to speak to a real person if they don't want to speak to an AI agent? What's your quick take on that one?
Yeah, look, for me, I personally I don't think it's a must-have. But I can also see why why people might want it. Like it is nice to know if you're talking to a real person versus talking to an AI. This is just for me personally, like, you might put a little bit more effort into the niceties if you're talking to a person versus if you're talking to an AI and you're talking to an AI, you might just be a little bit more direct. Um, but ultimately, I think particularly if we're talking about text-based, chatbot style communication, I think I would personally make the assumption that a lot of the time I'm talking to an AI until I can work out that it's a human.
Okay, yeah. So look,
Yeah.
we've got time for a couple of more questions, I think. So how important is the training process of AI use in the workplace for the quality of AI agentic output delivery? Because many companies want to apply AI and use it to be the best available capacity possible, but they lack the training and the confidence in how to conduct initial corporate training into a day-to-day practice and use it at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously very important. I mean, Martin read out the stat earlier as well. 74% of employees aren't ready to really start using AI tooling. I think, yeah, and I'm that was I think that was a Gartner stat. I'm sure it's probably primarily US centric stat, but I'm sure it's not that dissimilar here. So Yeah, like training is going to be essential. Not like it's going to be essential for a number of reasons. One is to get efficiency in actually using the AI tooling, but it's also just to get people to use it full stop. Because obviously there's going to be a portion of the population where their jobs are impacted due to the use of AI. And if you don't have the right training and you don't have the right processes around that, then yeah,
Uh,
people are going to resist.
we'll squeeze a couple more in. Like, so given the fact that many boards have historically found it challenging to keep pace with technology discussions, do you think they're equipped to engage meaningfully with AI strategy and its implications? Yeah.
Maybe I'll take that one. I think the answer is not yet, but but it's a topic of if you go and spend time with the AICD or any of the board governance bodies, they are providing significant training in this area, and it's working. I think most board members are by their very nature curious, but you can only pick so much up from the textbooks. And so what the best training is doing is putting board directors back in the classroom and making them use Chat GPT and then build an agentic simple model using one of the agent builders. I think it's going to move very fast. I do think that there's a much bigger consciousness about the social aspects that relate to it, the risk of data security, and probably less about the cultural use of AI to take a business forward and close the gap between where their capability is and the potential of AI. The big risk is if we don't act, we'll get disrupted. So it's on everyone's agenda, but they're still getting up the curve.
Do you think there's a risk of the dot-com style collapse that's going to hinder the development of AI? Because, there's just challenges in
Well,
realizing acceptable ROI.
Well, if you believe Gartner, we're at the top of the hype curve. So we're about to jump into at least agentic AI. We're about to fall into the trough of disillusionment. The MIT report suggests that that's possibly the case. I heard a stat today that said 47% of current AI projects will be abandoned, primarily substituted by cybersecurity, which is seen to be a higher priority for
Mm.
CIOs and CTOs and even boards in this environment. Um, uh, so I think, yes, there's going to be disappointment, but like all of these markets, there'll be winners and losers.
Yeah. So as opposed to a fully controlled approach to implementing AI across the organization, what are your thoughts on controlled experimentation to get your team or teams experimenting within specific guardrails?
I actually think that's quite a good approach. I know some of the organizations we've worked with that have been quite successful with some of their AI rollouts is where they've basically had individual groups or teams spin up a number of different AI initiatives.
Mm.
They've experimented, they've allowed experimentation, they've seen what works and what doesn't work. And then it's important to cut back. Like once you you've got to know when to kind of put the brakes on and go, okay, these are the ones that aren't working and let's pause those versus these are the ones where we're really going to invest. Um, but I certainly think um, it's good to have the organization-wide kind of strategic direction to push people in the right way, but then letting individual teams being able to experiment depending on, their ability to do so. I think there's a lot of value in that too.
Yeah, okay. There's so well, CEOs and execs managing businesses, obviously they're deploying AI at scale, and they're concerned about the company implications of this technology itself. What are some of, just a couple of high level, what are the concerns?
So that is the
There's
concerns of just the
CEOs,
high level
yeah, just
concerns
high
of
level
deploying
concern, yeah,
AI.
yeah.
Martin, I'm not sure. Did you want to take that one?
Yeah. So um, most of these customers we've spoken to have tried something and it kind of works. They're more worried about the time when it kind of doesn't work. An example might be, be where an agent is engaging with a customer and the customers suddenly realize that that agent has been serving them 24/7 and didn't know they were an agent, but then asked them, so are you an agent? And the agent says, yes, I am. Well, that's not a great experience. It's not necessarily the wrong answer, but it's not a great experience for the customer. So uh, the idea of going, I kind of put this into an MVP scenario. It's very easy to release new products at the minimum viable product level. In this case, as long as they're not interfacing with the customer, because I think that's where the problem is. So yes, go and try something in the backyard, but don't put it on the street where everyone's going to see it yet. We've got work to do.
Okay. Yeah. One last question, then we're done because we're over time. Martin, just to summarize things, tell me a little bit about Clear Dynamics and what's relevant to today's conversation. I'll wrap it
Yeah,
up there.
sure. And certainly appreciate the time. And I'll put it on the record that Dan and I have a different view on the unit costs of building agents and running agents going forward. We'll talk about that separately.
Yeah.
But let me step back for a little bit and talk a little bit about Clear Dynamics and then why it's really relevant for this conversation. So our mission at Clear Dynamics is to solve the problem of technical debt. Technical debt exists in Excel spreadsheets, it exists in your customized software, and exists in the 40-year-old COBOL code that might be running your ERP. It's a problem today because it takes time to manage and support this technical debt that could be better spent on your future. It's a reason why 70% of IT budgets are spent on maintenance, not growth. Clear Dynamics solves this problem by modernizing or replacing what is driving technical debt with enterprise-grade software applications hosted in the cloud. We work for companies like BOQ, Bank of Queensland, Cargill, Latitude Financial Services. So it's at the big complex end of town. So your second question was, so what's this got to do with AI?
Yeah.
Well, had this conversation. Well, we build these applications as a service, leveraging our own multi-agent platform. We call it AOS, Artificial Intelligence Enterprise Operating System. It's a mouthful, but what it allows us to do is simplify the process of building enterprise-grade software. We take the risk and cost out of the process. And we've spent 15 years building our multi-agent platform. We started in 2012 using machine learning and more recently integrated AI agents into our platform and the way we work. So what I think is really relevant to this audience is over 15 years, the sorts of issues we're talking about have become lessons for us and we've built in those solutions into our platform going forward. For example, we put AI agents, which are LLM based, for activities where predictive works, like business rule identification. But we use automation for activities like code development, where we know that deterministic outcomes are really important. We put humans in the loop where it matters to our clients, like in change management, change management, or where we have to validate the business rules, or maybe even tweak code manually as some developers like to do. But we let the platform do the heavy lifting where autonomy is not a risk. And we've built our agent around your data, which allows us to develop solutions that integrate applications with other AI agents. It's really important because AI agents work better on data than they do on code. And we've built in security, composability, and evergreen features that mean we eliminate technical debt into the future. And finally, because the platform's doing so much heavy lifting, we can do this as a much smaller team than many of the other options, which is benefits we share with our customers. So if you sort of step back and say, over the last 15 years, the very issues that we're talking about are decisions we've wrestled with and embedded into our platform, which makes us, I feel, a great partner, both in developing applications, but also helping you take a step in the right direction on your AI path or AI journey. So if you
Nice.
want to see a teenage agent in action, please give us a call.
All right, wonderful. I want to thank everybody for today. Obviously, the speakers, Martin, Daniel, wonderful talking to you. Appreciate your time today. And I want to thank everyone once again for joining today and taking your time out of your busy day. We'll be in contact with everyone over the coming week just to gather your feedback and insights. There was a lot of questions we didn't get to, but we will look to try and get to them, and we'll call through everyone, get your feedback, as I said. And if you do want to set up a time to talk, maybe personally, directly to Martin, Daniel, we can set that up over the course of the next week. Again, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you and goodbye.